So welcome to Grid Talk, and today I've got Greg Helbeck. Greg, I'm excited to talk to you today because, well, man, you and I, we got to meet each other in Tulum, Mexico, right, for a mastermind, and I was like, man, this kid is young and sharp, and I think you won the run, right? You did,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then, and so anyhow, I was like, man, I'm gonna enjoy getting to learn a little bit about his story. And so I appreciate you coming on and talking to our Grid family about your journey, your story, and welcome, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, that was a fun trip. I really enjoyed that. And it was amazing to meet, so many new people in such a short period of time, but then forge those relationships in such a, compressed timeline. It was really a blessing to be down there. And I'm really looking forward to the one next year.
Yeah, man, it was a little wild, right? I was like, what are we going to expect in Mexico with COVID going on? But it was all good, right?
It was amazing. I was so impressed too with the way that they put the event on, and then the whole the resort with the tents and stuff. It was so cool.
Dude, it was awesome. It was awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm like, I got to do this for my team at some point. Bring the entire team down there. Be awesome.
Totally.
Yeah,
same. That's awesome.
Well, let's dive into a little bit of your story, right? If I remember correctly, you live in California right now. Is that right? You're in
Cal. I live San Diego, in the San Diego area, up in North County, San Diego.
Right. And but your investments, where you invest, is in New York. Did I get that right? Okay.
Yep. That is where I'm from. So I'm from New York. I go back there a lot, probably on average every 6 weeks. So 90% of my business is operating in New York. And then I do a handful of deals out in Southern Cal, but they're few and far between out here. I don't know this market as well as I do the New York market. And this market is also triple the price in New York. So it's a little more different strategies for sure.
That's crazy, man. West Coast to East Coast, right? Talk about virtual.
Yeah, man.
Virtual business.
We are doing a lot of virtual deals for sure. And that's something I'm very experienced with.
Okay. Let's learn a little bit about you. So where did you go to school? Where'd you go to college?
I went to a college called SUNY Cobleskill. So that's where I got my 4-year degree. Before I did that, I went to a community college, transferred to Cobleskill. I was actually fortunate enough to take the Cobleskill classes locally, so I didn't have to go away and get in debt or anything like that. So that worked out pretty well for me. And I graduated college in 2018. My memory is not the best, but 2018. So a couple of years ago. Okay. And I've been a full-time real estate entrepreneur ever since.
Well, how did that happen? I mean, how'd you get into real estate at such a young age? Did your parents tell you about it? Was it a friend? Tell me the story there.
Sure. So basically, long story long, because I know this is a podcast where we want to get into the stories. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't the worst student, but I wasn't the best student. So I had some okay grades, but I wasn't getting on the dean's list or anything like that. And I always, honestly, Rob, I always wanted to get wealthy, not to, be Ebenezer Scrooge, but just so I had freedom and I have the ability to do what I want when I want. And I always looked at having a normal job as kind of I'm trying to think of the word, but basically there was no freedom with that. I had to be somewhere only for money. And I started thinking, I've always been a pretty deep thinker ever since I was a little kid. And I'm like, wait, the only reason I'm here is for money. So if I can find a way to make money without having to be here, I don't have to be here, So, it was kind of like a math problem or something like that, which I wasn't the best at back in the day. But I went to college and I went to a seminar during college. So this is how it all started. So I was at a seminar after playing competitive hockey. So after hockey, I went to college and I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, 20-year-old kid. And I went to a seminar. It was like one of those get rich overnight seminars, seminar comes to town, kind of like the circus.
Sure.
And talking about this whole thing of a double close deal, which I had no idea what the hell that was. They were like, you could buy a property and you can resell it on the same day and you don't need the money. The buyer will bring the money, or you can use a transactional loan to essentially fund the first deal and then keep the difference from the second deal, the B to C or whatever. And I said, wait a minute, I have no money. I can go out and do this. I have a lot of time on my hands. I don't have a job. And, they were talking about $10,000, $15,000, which at the time seemed like a lot of money. And I was like, that's like a lot of money. That's more money than I've ever seen in one shot. So I said, heck, I'm going to be a real estate investor. And I kid you not, I was at that seminar. It was 2015. I made a decision that day. I am going to be a successful real estate investor. I didn't know what I was going to do before that. It was almost like I had this aha moment, and I'm like, I'm going to go all into this. And I actually remember looking back, I was in the front and my two friends were behind me. And I said, guys, I don't know what either one of you guys are doing, but I'm going to sign up for this little upsell thing. And if you guys are smart, we could probably negotiate three for one. My one friend bailed. So my other friend, who's actually a very successful investor to this day, decided to go in 2 for 1. So $2,000, $1,000 each. Went to the seminar. They taught us all we needed to know. It was good. We invested in ourselves. And man, 9 months later, I popped out a little paycheck for a referral fee. And then a couple months after that, I started doing some wholesale deals. And from there, it's, expanded into, 100 plus deals at this point. And I've been able to build up a nice little successful business, over the last, 4.5 years. And time kind of flies because once you get into a rhythm, it's almost like every day is kind of like Groundhog's Day. And, you look back and you're like, man, lots happened over the last 4 or 5 years. Like I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot, and here we are.
Tell us what your business looks like today, by the way.
Sure.
What does it look like today?
We have I have a small team right now. It's me, an assistant. I have a project manager, and then I have a virtual assistant who does a lot of like really heavy admin stuff without like a phone or anything like that. We buy on average 3 to 5 properties a month. So we don't do a lot of high volume yet, but all of our deals, Rob, are very profitable deals. Like if we're wholesaling a house, we're generally going to make $25,000 to $30,000 per deal. If we're going to take a property down and either renovate it or clean it up and put it on the market, otherwise known as wholetailing, we're going to make, $40,000+ usually on those deals when they're successful. We've had some big ones too, where we made over 6 figures. So I have a lean, mean, very profitable business. I'm looking to actually grow that now and do more volume, but do that profitably and not have an overhead machine. And at the same time, in 2020, I decided I need to start keeping some more rental properties. So right now I'm actively getting, 1 to 2 BRRRR properties a month. That's like the pace I've been on. And at the same time, there's a commercial building that I ran into in the beginning of 2021 that I'm going to be closing on hopefully in the next few weeks, which is a mixed use building. So it's going to be more of a value add reposition. So I'm a little scared to buy that because it's kind of out of my comfort zone, but it's a pretty good deal. So I'm kind of venturing into some of these smaller apartment buildings as well as, as the market presents them to me.
What is that? And that's in New York? Did you find?
Yeah. Yep, that's in New York. It's in the so the area I operate in is called the Hudson Valley. So it's a region north of Manhattan. So it's about 45 miles outside of the George Washington Bridge. So there's a lot of demand for properties there, especially after COVID. The price points are getting hotter by the minute, but at the same time, it's an affordable place to live in terms of being close to the city, but not being in the middle of nowhere. Because some people think of upstate New York like I have no teeth and I'm a hillbilly. This is not that place. This is more of a reasonable place to live. So, and
that's where you grew up, right?
I'm from there. Yep, okay. I'm from there, and I know the area very well. And it's and I like that because I think there's a lot of talk about doing deals in areas where you don't know anything about, and I think that will work. I really, especially because I close on a lot of properties, I want to know that market extremely well because if I don't know what I'm getting into, to me, that's very risky, especially when you're going to put other people's capital in these deals. So I really want to know that market before I start to get involved, and I'm not just shooting stuff at the dartboard.
So what took you to Florida? I mean, not Florida, but what took you to San Diego? Like how did that come about? It sounds because you started the business in the Hudson Valley, I would imagine. Like you got in there, and then and then one day you met a girl, right? Is that what happened?
Well, it's sort of true, but basically to get to talk about the California thing. So I think every New Yorker's dream is to live on the West Coast because it seems so foreign to an East Coaster who's used to freezing their butt off all winter. Yeah. So I remember visiting California when I was in college, and I thought it was pretty cool. And then I kept going back every couple months to like check it out again, and check it out again, and check it out again. And I remember I was like in this situation where my business was doing okay. It wasn't making like any type of money where I could have like legitimate freedom. But I was still like, that was how I was making my money. So I was like making some money at it, but it wasn't like big money. And I was like, I need to be able to virtualize this business to where like, I don't want to have to go to properties. I don't want to have to like be dependent upon like dropping everything I'm doing and running out to a house and locking it up. So I virtualized the business in 2018. And once I did that, I got my first check from a deal where I never saw the house. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot of money and I can like do this from anywhere, and this allows me to sort of scale it. Or at least scale my time out. So once I virtualized the business, I said, you know what, I can do this from anywhere. It's actually good that I'm not here a lot of the times because it allows me to try to work on the business more than in the business. Yeah. I still work on the business, to be honest with you. But I did, I was like, I'm going to do this. Like I was 23, so it's 3 years ago now almost. And I said, if I'm going to move to California, when I'm a 23-year-old kid with really no responsibilities, this is the time to do it. So it was like kind of that window was there for me to like pull that off. So I moved out here by myself, didn't really know anybody. I knew a few people like briefly. Moved into a nice apartment in a really nice area, San Diego, and was kind of like, whoa, what did I just do here? I live on my own now. I'm not in my parents' house. I live in a really nice apartment. I live in this beautiful area. Like, I had no idea what I really even did, honestly. It took me a couple months to really absorb all the change that was going on in my life with the move.
Yeah. That's interesting. What's the psychology is interesting there, right? And you had to go to the most expensive state. Like, as an investor, which is the most expensive state, right?
I hope Gavin Newsom is listening. I'm not a resident in California, and I don't plan to be a resident for tax purposes. So I still go to New York. Yeah, Newsom, if you're listening, recall. Anyway.
That's right.
Just kidding.
So man, so you ended up in San Diego, right? Yeah. You systemized your business so that you could do it virtually, right? You're in the process of now really kind of, I think, and it's great to understand at your age, especially at 26, right? You're about to turn 26, that, flipping, wholesaling, it's all earned income, right? Where you've got to get to is the other side of that equation, right? So you're in this buy and hold accumulation phase of your life. But let me ask you, like, I know that the career's short, right? It's like, let's look, it's 5 years, right? And by the way, you've been 5 years in a good market. So
yes.
Have you had your ass handed to you yet? Or are you like, hey, it's all good?
I've gotten rocked a couple times for sure, man.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think everyone might define that differently, but for me, there's been a lot of failure. It happens on a weekly basis, but I've tried to train my mind to where I don't get as emotionally involved as I used to. Mm-hmm. So just to give you like a quick example, this is one that was more painful at the time, even though it didn't sound that bad. But I think given my circumstances a couple of years ago, it really sucked. So here's one that I bet you some listeners can relate to. I didn't have a lot of money when I started. My parents were not very wealthy. They were middle class, just like a lot of people. And I remember I had no money to advertise. So I was putting out bandit signs and I was doing some targeted direct mail. And I was literally handwriting letters, like on my freaking desk, like handwriting letters. And I remember I discovered that I could stop handwriting these letters if I bought a printer for $200 and I can mail merge these letters so that I can just stuff them and write the envelopes. And then I hired someone eventually to do that. But I remember one time I spent a good amount of my marketing budget and I printed out like 300 letters, or this was like 500 letters. And I had the wrong phone number, Rob, on the letter. And to me, it doesn't seem like that big of a failure, but I remember that was such a big part of my marketing budget. And I remember I was at like a ground zero moment. I was at the park by my house. I realized that I did this and I said, oh my gosh, like it was like that setback where like you have to make that decision. Like, do I want to continue with this? And at the time I really needed the income to really keep the business afloat. Mm-hmm. And that was a tough time. That was a tough time. And it set me back for a couple months. And then I remember another one, which is it was a weird time where my friend and I, we went to this seminar. It was a seminar.
Okay, let me ask you, did you mail the letters and then realize that you had the wrong number?
Yeah, paid for the post. Yeah. Oh yeah. The whole thing. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It sucked because I wasn't getting any calls. And I said, this is super weird. Like I should probably get like at least 1%. No calls. And I'm like, that's odd. Let me just double check. And I'm like, oh no, it's the wrong number. And it was devastating. It sucked. I mean, now if that would happen, like I send a lot of mail now, so I still would have been pissed, but it wouldn't have been like back in the day when I really was depending on that. I had another one where my friend and I, we went to a seminar and we decided after that seminar, he wanted to be like the next, big mogul. So we decided to partner, and it was like, when you first date your girlfriend or your wife, it's like the best thing ever. And then like after 3 months, you're like, oh, this is kind of normal. Not that it's bad, but just like the euphoria wears off, Mm-hmm. And then you got to just work on your relationship. But anyway, so we did this thing. We had our, business honeymoon or whatever in Sedona, Arizona, like metaphorically there, obviously. And I remember he went on Birthright which is a trip that you can go on if you practice Judaism. Mm-hmm. And he came back from Birthright and he was super off. And I remember we were running out of money. Like our company was starting to go like literally out of business. Like, and we were supposed to go on this trip somewhere. And I'm like, dude, I'm looking through the P&L. I'm like, bro, we got to cancel this. We're going to get hosed right now if we do this. And we had to separate duties. We had to break off as partners. We lost a bunch of money. there was like no money coming in. And I'm like, I felt so far away from getting to where I wanted to get to, which was Southern California at the time. It was one of those moments, Rob, where, and I'm sure you've been here many times, where you have to be aware of the situation that you're in and understand during that moment. And this is a lot easier said than done, but you got to understand that in that moment, you got to make that decision to push forward versus push back. Because I could have totally justified and said, you know what, this is not for me. I'm going to go get a job on Wall Street and I'm going to justify why I'm doing that. But I said, you know what, I'm going to figure out how to get deals cheaper. I'm going to figure out how to generate leads with not a lot of marketing, make some money, and then go back into my original strategy. And I'm very happy that that happened to me, because that changed my business and my life. And it allowed me to learn new skill sets that I have now that will forever serve me. So those were some like really painful ones back in the day that really had a high toll on my emotions. And I bought some properties that were stinkers. You know, I've gotten screwed on a bunch of wholesale. I had one deal where we were supposed to make 200 grand on it, and the lawyer and the court system overruled the sale because it was too low and it was a probate deal. And I thought I was making 200 grand, and it just blew up in my face. So yeah, man, it's definitely a roller coaster out there. But the more you can, for the listeners, the more you can understand that that's inevitable and it's going to happen to everyone, the better chance you're going to have of being able to withstand those punches, because they're going to always be there. And I've just accepted that at this point.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is it's amazing how the muscle, your stress muscle, grows
Yes.
as you start experiencing new challenges, new problems, new issues in your life, right? You just grow as a professional. You grow it. And I remember I was listening to Grant Cardone the other day, and it was interesting because he was like, listen, after a while, you're just going to have to accept you're going to get sued. You're like, something bad is going to happen. Like you might have a business failure. He's like, heck, I got on my bucket list that I want to be in a congressional hearing, right? Because anybody that's in a congressional hearing, right? I mean, he's like the extreme.
He's a nut job. Yeah,
he's a nut job. Those guys are massively successful, right? So he's like, that's on my bucket list. I'm like, yeah, definitely. I never want to be on a congressional hearing.
I don't want to be in a congressional hearing. I barely
no way. No way. Those guys are getting grilled, right? But
yeah.
But his point is, you know, you're going to face these challenges, and growth comes out of those challenges, right? And
100%.
the bigger you get, sometimes the bigger target you are, right? So you just got to accept that.
I heard this great quote that I heard on another podcast, and someone said that at every level there's another devil. And I was like, I remember pausing that, and I'm like, man, that's so true. Because I remember when I first moved out here, I thought all my problems, I was so naive, Rob. I thought all my problems would go away. Like, I'm living the SoCal dream, bachelor life, yada, yada, yada. And I was miserable. You know, I'm like, now I got all these new problems I got to solve. So I've discovered, and I have a lot more to learn, but the better I can become at being a problem solver in my personal life and in my business, the more I'm going to grow, and the closer I'm going to get to my goals.
So what are some of those goals? I'm curious, right? Like, what are some of the things that you want to achieve in the next 5 years, 10 years? What, you know, I know I've noticed that you do a lot of reading, right? You're always kind of synthesizing this information and delivering it back, which is super valuable, man. I encourage you to keep doing that. It's awesome. So you're a big reader. So what are some of the things that you're thinking about over the next 10 years?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I would say on the business end, like, I want to be earning within the next couple of years, like a multiple 7-figure net income, you know, because a lot of people talk about their top line, and I really like the top line's important because you can be profitable and have a big bottom line, but I really want to be earning a person like a multiple 7-figure income. And then in terms of the wealth side, I wanted to have an 8-figure net worth in the next 5 to 7 years by strategically holding onto these properties and getting involved in deals that make sense and being able to capitalize on opportunities that will really build my net worth up. And that's stuff I never really thought about when I was just trying to build my business, because it was all about just like bringing money in the door. So those are some like tangible, measurable goals for the next, 5 to 7 years. And then in terms of the personal side, I want to be able, and this is kind of wishy-washy, but I really want to learn how to be happy in the moment, but at the same time, be motivated enough to keep going after my goals. Because I used to have this bad habit, and I still suffered a little bit, like where I had this I'll be happy when syndrome. And then I realized over like doing this for 4 years, like, even though I'm going to hit my goals, I can still have shit go wrong in my life. And that's going to be inevitable. So like, for example, I had a relationship issue in the beginning of the year, and I made like 100 grand that week or some crazy number. And I was like, I wasn't even happy. I was like, great, the money's in the bank. Cool. Like, we'll keep growing the business. But like, I'm in this disaster, like this stressful time in my relationship. I don't know what to do. I'm in like this crossroads. So just being able to have the mindset to be able to accept these things that are inevitable for anyone, and not let these circumstances sometimes dictate my decisions and try to be as logical as possible, even when you're making emotional decisions, especially in business.
Yeah, man.
That's a big deal for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's like figuring out what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And doing more of that, knowing that it's not money, it's not material stuff. It just isn't, right? It's not. It's the little things in life. And you got to figure that piece out. For me, a big piece of it is growth, right? Like I love learning and growing and meeting new people and pouring into entrepreneurs but that, I don't know, that wakes me up, right? Do you know, have you figured out yet what wakes you up? Are you still working on that piece?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think there's a great book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy that I read back in the day. I still read it like once a year. And he talks about, you got to find your life core values. And my core values, ironically, were in the same group, so I'm not surprised, but freedom, growth, and happiness. So growth is one of them. And if I'm living a life congruent with my core values that are important to me because I determine them, I'm generally happy. But if I'm living inconsistent and incongruent with what I want, I will always be sort of unhappy because I know that I want to go to X, but I know I want to do X, but I'm really doing Y. Mm-hmm. So I think being aware of that for me is a thing that I always need to keep front and center. And the more I can be consistent with the person I want to become, which is kind of like you're always chasing that shiny thing, but that's where it really happens. That's when I feel very fulfilled. For example, when I remember before I really got involved in this personal development stuff and reading, like I would be very incongruent. I would say something and I would tell people that I want to do something, or I would even talk to myself, which is more dangerous. I would say I want to do this, but my actions wouldn't back that up. So now if I'm behaving congruent with my ambitions, even though I might not be at my goals yet, I'm still happy because I know I will get there eventually. And when I get there, the goal line will keep moving, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw you talking about discipline equals freedom, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely does.
Yeah,
for sure.
And there's something weird. There's something maybe it's the entrepreneur, maybe it's but there's something about the struggle that brings free joy. At least what I've seen with many entrepreneurs, like you played hockey. So let's talk about this, right? You played hockey. You played hockey from when you were little, or like when did you start playing hockey?
Okay. I started when I was like 5 or 6. I took a break for a couple of years, like 5 or 6 years, and then I started playing again competitively when I was like 13 or 14 or something like that. Okay. So like I played from like 6 to like 10, and then like 14 to like 20 or 19 or something like that. Okay. So that really taught me a lot about business. And
that's what I was gonna say. What did you learn from that? Because that's kind of where I was going. What did you learn from that?
So the first lesson I would say is kind of counterintuitive, but I think the listeners will definitely be able to kind of take what they want from it. So I learned that in hockey, even though you're working hard, doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get the results you're after. And I'm not saying that to be disencouraging. I'm saying that because you need to work hard and also have the right strategy. Mm-hmm. So I've learned that massive action with the wrong strategy is a recipe to get frustrated. And I've learned that I've read that in books, but I've also learned that. So it really taught me, because I worked my butt off, Rob. I was working my butt off doing the wrong things, or as Jim Rohn would say, I was majoring in minor things. Mm-hmm. And I was creating the illusion in my head that I was working hard, which I was if you were to look at it on the surface, but I was really not doing things that were going to move the needle. So I was kind of disillusioning. I was like kind of like misleading myself. And then ultimately I failed at that, and I had to accept that and then take those lessons that I, pulled out of that experience and move on to my next venture. So that was a big lesson I learned. I learned another thing in hockey where, like, for example, I was playing up in Massachusetts back in the day in 2013, 2014. And I was kind of the outlier. I was the kid from New York who was a little sour. I've always had a little edge to me. I'm very aggressive by nature. I think might be where I'm from. I'm a very direct person. And I would never put up with any crap. Like if someone said something, I would just right back at them. I'd get in like little scruffles at practice, and I always had a target on my back. And I learned that at the end of the day, if you're trying to make other people happy all day long, you're going to be damn miserable. And I accepted that when I was playing hockey, and I started to not give a what about what other people thought about me. And that really helped me in business, because when you're trying to buy and sell investment properties, people are going to get pissed at you. You're going to have lawsuits. You're going to have problems. People are going to talk smack. And if you're not okay with that, you're probably in the wrong business, whether you're in a brokerage business or in the investment business. It's the same deal.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I think of Steve Jobs, the commercial of like, here's to the rebel rousers.
Oh
right?
yeah, I love that.
And like you come to mind, that's awesome, right? Because it's true. You have to have a little bit of, you have to have this belief in yourself, and you have to have this edge in order to say, like, I'm just going to go freaking do it, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what I've noticed with people that, I think people that have played sports at a competitive level have learned that along the way. It's this okay, you're going to get knocked down, you're going to get back up, you're going to figure out what you did wrong, you're going to fix it, and you're just going to kind of keep moving forward. So it's such a great training ground for a business owner and an entrepreneur. I mean, I guess you could get it in other ways, right? You could get it maybe, Ryan Serhant might have got it like being as an actor, right? And it's like you go out and you audition and they're like, you're no good, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to pick yourself back up, and you got to. So anybody that puts themselves out there, I think learns that. But sports comes to mind because that was the thing that I gravitated to, right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting how, like, I think at the time, like, I remember I was like, I like to talk with a lot of stories because I remember like learning how to communicate. Like when I communicate through a story, people can relate more than me just saying like a principle. So I remember like when I was playing hockey, I was living with a host family because I was like 19 or 18. I think I was 18 years old. And I remember like my habits and like my disciplines were so poor. Like, and this wasn't even that long ago. I was not conscious of my choices and I was not aware of what I was doing. And I remember I'd get up at like 9 a.m. and I would, watch hockey on TV for 2 hours and make pancakes and sit around and do nothing. And I just was so okay with that because that's where I was at in my life at the time. But looking back, just even being able to pull the lessons out of the ultimate failure that was hockey, it allows me to make better decisions today as a man and as a business owner, as a young business owner, because I think there's a lot of, especially in our industry, in the real estate industry, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of chest pounding, and there's a lot of, keeping up with the Joneses, metaphorically. And I just try my best to not let that impact me. I can't say that I'm perfect because it certainly does sometimes, but I really try my best to like take everything with a grain of salt and just make sure I'm putting one foot in front of another every day so I can ultimately get to that next level.
So let's talk a little bit about your habits. What does your schedule look like now, right? Have people kind of understand what your day looks like today.
Yeah. Great question. So really, I get up because I live on the West Coast. If you're not getting up at like 5 or 6 o'clock and you're doing business on the East Coast, you're at a big disadvantage because it's 3 hours behind. So I get up in between 5 and 6 o'clock every day, depending on what I have going on. And the biggest thing I would say that I do, I don't have a crazy, insane routine, but what I always do for the most part is I don't look at my text messages or emails the first hour and a half of my day. So I'll read for a half hour. I'll make myself a cup of coffee. And then I'll work on a project after that doesn't involve me communicating with somebody, like me responding to an email or responding to a text. It's like I'll work on some marketing, or I'll work on my vision, or I'll work on systems for my team. But I do something that is more of a creative, offensive type of activity. And then after an hour and a half, because that puts me in a good mindset, it gets me very empowered. And then it allows me to get into the proper state. And this is like some Tony Robbins stuff, to where like if I have a crappy email come through, if I have a crappy text come through, I'm in the right mindset to handle that. Because I used to get up in the morning and I would look at my emails, look at my phones, and it'd be like a Broadway show with all this drama. And I would be like pissed off. I would anchor my day like crap. And then I'd be like, felt like I'm running uphill all day. So I remember listening to an Ed Milet podcast, and he was like, you got to like not do that. You got to not look at your phone. And Dean Graziosi was talking about that. And I said, that's a good idea. I'm gonna try it out. Another thing I do in the morning, more of a health thing. I drink at least a liter of water right when I wake up. And what that does, it hydrates the hell out of me all day. It sets the tone for me physically to where I have a lot of energy. I think generally I'm an energetic person, but if I'm not hydrated and I'm not feeling good, that's my new governor. You know what I mean? That's my new governor. So if I can put some green juice in my body and have a liter of water and have some black coffee, it gives me the fuel I need to propel and get that momentum for the day.
That's awesome. I love it. It's so important. Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Same thing. It's like I don't want to look at anything for the first time.
No. I like sometimes if I have to go in my email just to like pull a file out, I literally will have my hand up on the screen. And I'm like, no lawyer emails, And then I'm just like, I'll take the file and I'll like click out and make sure like it's all.
Yeah, because you want to keep yourself in the right state, in a creative state.
Yes.
Right? Not in a I've got to work on problem state, right?
Yes.
So
It's
that's such powerful advice. That's
thank
awesome.
you. It's very it works right away. Like it's something that you do it on day one and you're like, man, I don't think I could ever go back to not doing this, because it makes you feel so good and it makes you feel very accomplished for the day. And then if you have the inevitable email that pisses you off, at least you got your most important work done, and you know that that might be the case and you can prepare for it.
Well, what I loved, you said, I forget the exact words. You said you actually prepare something that or build something that helps you propel the business forward.
Yes.
It's taking action on things that are going to help propel the business forward. So it doesn't derail the most important piece, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of it is working on the vision and working on systems for my team, because as I start to grow the team out, I got to make sure my systems are solid. So I like that stuff, but that stuff is like, and Stephen Covey would say, it's important, but it's not urgent. An email is urgent, right? But working on your vision is probably the most important thing you can do, but it's not urgent. It's not like it needs to be due tomorrow. It's kind of up to you to get it done. So I love working on that stuff first thing in the morning, man. It's like my version of meditating. I'm not a big meditator, but like doing that is my version of meditating and being present.
Yeah. And you're probably listening to things and putting good things into your body, and you're framing, right? And you're what I call it, always, I'm always just trying to anchor my day in a positive way, right? Yeah. And so what, tell me a little bit about how now let's talk business, right? Your model is direct mail, PPC, tell me a little bit about that. Like how many leads to an appointment, to a conversation, to an appointment? I don't know if you've kind of drilled into those numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be happy for that. Okay. My best channel by far is direct mail. I do a lot of also internet search engine optimization stuff and some targeted cold calling. But to give you the skinny on direct mail in my area, costs me $3,000 to buy a house. If I'm going direct to seller, that's without a referral. That's that. Just $3,000 of ad spend on average gets us a deal. That averages out to about 42 leads to get a closed deal. So this is a metric that is very important. There's leads per contract and there's leads per revenue. Like I care about leads per closed revenue or equity, depending on what I'm doing with that property. So 42 leads will make the company money or build equity. So that's a number that I watch like a hawk. And generally $3,000 of ad spend will get us those leads that are quality leads that allow us to do our business consistently. On the cold call side, which is another thing that I'm pretty familiar with, but not the way a lot of people are doing it. I do a lot of targeted cold calling, which is changing by the day because there's more and more people are starting to do that. So it's becoming more of a red ocean. But on that, I'll tell you what, Rob, this sounds too good to be true. But back in 2018, I was every 6 targeted cold call leads, we were making like 30 grand. And it was insane. The 6, it was a blue ocean. There was no list stacker. There was no one was really cold calling. Everyone was mailing. And that obviously.
So you were list stacking, right? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah. Before list stackers were even out there. So there was no list stackers. I was using this program called AccuZip, which is a postal cleansing software. And I was taking all my lists and I was sticking it through AccuZip, and then all these vacant houses were spitting out. No one was doing this. I was a pioneer. And I was getting deals where, I'm not kidding, we were making like $30,000, $40,000 wholesale fees and doing this virtually to the tune of 3 to 4 times a month. And I didn't know what was going on because it seemed so easy. I was like, there's something up. Someone's going to catch on to this. And now it's changed and you have to do a lot more marketing. But direct mail has always been my favorite channel because it allows you to have predictable revenue, assuming that you have a decent sales process. And I have pretty good faith now where when I'm going to send a campaign out, I know the numbers well enough to where I can pretty much predict what should come in. And I have my numbers to where if something doesn't work out the way that it should work out, I can really look at some key metrics and figure out what that root problem might be. And then the next time I do a campaign or next time I do a drop, I can kind of solve for that problem that I'm trying to solve for. So it could mean that maybe the postcard didn't really catch people's eyeballs and the response rate was low, or maybe the lead quality was bad and we were going too broad with our lists. Heck, maybe we didn't spend enough money on the campaign, which is usually the root cause. I see a lot of new people. I got 2 leads. I'm like, oh, you got 2 leads. Well, you need 45 to probably get a deal in direct mail. So go get 43 more leads and then tell me what you got. And that's, a lot of times the issue. So that's like a big marketing hub for us. And then
let me ask you a question. What's your cost per postcard? I mean, how many are you sending out on one drop?
Yeah, so I spend anywhere from $15,000 to $18,000, so 15,000 to 18,000 postcards per cycle. So the way I do mailings is I have campaigns, and in each campaign there's a cycle. So generally, like each campaign will have 5 cycles, which is 5 different touches that the prospects will get, our mailing. And then the way that I try to make direct mail, the way that direct mail is really profitable for me is because I'm in the thing for 5 cycles. So even if cycle 1 tanks, 2 and 3, we're probably going to make our money back. And once we make our money back, it's almost like gambling. It's all house money at that point. And then we can really accelerate our campaigns and generally get like a anywhere from 6 to 8 to 1 return on our ad spend if we're optimized fully.
Dude,
which is solid.
That is super solid. That's super solid.
Yeah.
So that's to a targeted list.
Targeted lists are always going to be the best for us, like our tax defaults in my market, but those lists are small, so you can really hit them. There's only so many people on that list in my county, really. So like I have to go
do it over and over. Yeah.
Yeah. A list that I've really liked too is, and this anyone can get this list. It's basically just people who've owned a property for over 20 years. You know what I mean? Like people like think about it. If someone's owned a property for
deep equity.
Yeah, tons of equity. Their basis is probably pretty low. So even if they sell at a discount, they're probably not going to take a loss on the house. Deferred maintenance. A lot of it is timing. It's a little luck. It's a little timing. Let's be honest. I mean, me and a competitor could mail the same freaking list and one seller could call me and then they could not call him and I can get $100,000 deal. And that's just the way it is, and it could be the opposite way too. So I've learned to accept that over the years. And as I've really looked at the numbers and refined the data, I've been able to really get more comfortable increasing my direct mail budget spend and all that stuff.
Well, I'll ask you one final question on that. What are some maybe 2 or 3 things with the marketing piece that you send out that you feel like absolute must for somebody?
Sure. I think the marketing piece, and that's a great question because that's a whole people go, oh, what should I send? Oh, it's like, you know what? I've noticed I've wrote Dan Kennedy sales letters on these postcards and I've lost a fortune. Mm-hmm. And I've also had the ugly postcard that literally says, hey, my name's Greg. I want to buy your house. If you're even interested in an offer, call me. That always wins. So I've noticed the simpler, the better. It's about timing. It's about being very clear what you do, how you do it, and not over communicating in a postcard. Because at the end of the day, a postcard is a very they're going to see it for about a second, and then they're going to decide they're either going to throw it out or they're going to call you, and you want to make sure that they're doing the latter there. So if you can be very simple and direct and make it easy to understand what you're doing. And I learned this from Brian Tracy, you want to communicate so simple that a 5-year-old can understand what you're saying and then repeat that same thing to another 5-year-old. So my postcards are very simple. It's like, I want to buy your house. I'll make you a fair offer. If you're even remotely interested in calling, just give me a ring and we'll talk to you and see if we're even a fit. And that really brings in a pretty good response.
What's interesting about that is that, it's so true, right? There's all these studies done when you make it too complicated, you make the brain have to think and it doesn't want to think, right? Like we're trained to try not to think, to save calories during the day. Yeah. And so you just gotta dumb it down and be like, you want to sell your house? Like I remember when I first started out, simple for me. If you're thinking about selling, I'm interested in buying, right? Yeah. Literally that was it. If you're thinking about selling, I'm interested in buying, call me here. And that literally is like, that was it. P.S. I'll buy it and as is condition. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I like how you said that because I've noticed too, as the market has changed and there's more people getting involved in this business, there's more people doing this. So you got to make sure you stand out. And a way that I've been able to do that in conjunction with the marketing, and I learned this from Frank Kern, who's really an internet marketer, but a lot of his stuff I take and just apply it in my, direct to consumer business, brick and mortar business. And what I do, and I train my people is I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, goodwill is the most important thing with these sellers because they're already skeptical calling in. They already kind of think it's a scam. And you got to begin the conversation that's already going on in their mind. So the way that I train my people is I'm like, listen, whether you buy the house or not, you're there to solve their problem and be helpful. So we enter our conversations with sellers saying, hey, listen, I'd be happy to look into your house. I just want to let you know, even if I don't buy your house, I promise I'm going to be helpful and you'll get some value out of this conversation. And that you're kind of future pacing them to want to commit to having that conversation because they know at the end of the conversation, it's going to be helpful no matter what. And I see a lot of investors, they act like freaking analysts at a bank or something. And they're just such wieners on the phone.
Dude, I'm smiling because when I would always handle a ton of short sale leads back in the day.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Right. And so I would always start off by saying, listen, at a minimum, if I'm not the person that can help you, I'll certainly point you in the right direction.
Yes.
Right? So let's just talk. You tell me what the situation is, and and I'll tell you whether or not I can help. Or I'll help you go somewhere else. And literally, it like takes all the pressure off of
Yeah.
that, and they'll tell you everything at that point.
Everything, dude. Because it's all about just having that conversation and being cool with them. And like I've had sellers leave me reviews on Google where they're like, "Hey, I spoke with Greg, and he was super nice, and he didn't buy my house, but he was super honest and upfront with me, and I really appreciate him doing that. So if you're considering selling, you should definitely give him a call because he's a nice guy." And that is better than, "Oh, Greg helped me out so much. He bought my house, and I was desperate." And no kidding, But I want the other reviews because I want the skeptical people to see that and then just give us a call and see if we're a fit.
Dude, I love how you said it. I know I've heard it before, but you have to have the conversation they're already having in their mind.
Yes.
Boom. That is so powerful, right?
Yeah, it's true, man. It's so very powerful. So I think that's Robert Collier, I think, that marketer.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, what advice would you give somebody that is looking to start on this journey, right? To start on being, the taking this real estate entrepreneur's journey. What advice would you give somebody?
Great question. So I would say if I had to sum it all up, I would say from my experience so far, which is not that much, it's only 5 years, but it's really, you got to understand what you're getting into and you got to commit to it in the beginning, because if you don't do that, it's so damn hard. You're just going to tap out when it gets hard. And that sounds cliche, but it's so true, because I think people they get into this business and they think that it's easier for the other guy, but the other guy has the same problems that you have. He's just solved them better than you. So if you can understand that that's going to be the case with you as well, and you can commit in advance that you're going to just make it happen no matter what, even though it's going to be hard as balls, then you'll be successful eventually, because it just comes down to numbers and at bats and making offers and negotiating. And the more you sharpen your skills, the more you'll expedite that. But if you can commit in advance that over time this will work, and this is a long-term business, it's not a freaking get rich overnight on Amazon crap. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a real business, and you got to treat it like that. And you got to like kind of, once you make the decision, you want to be a real estate entrepreneur, you want to follow a couple people, not like 10 people, and laser focus, like put the blinders on, you know what I mean? And like, because of that, like I'm not really on Facebook, really like searching. I have like a newsfeed blocker on my computer, and like I'll respond to messages once in a while, but I try to have my blinders on to where I'm so focused on the objectives and the goals. I try not to let other things distract me as much as they used to. So that would really be my best advice for someone looking to get into this business.
Burn the boats.
Burn the boats. Yeah. Burn the boats. Exactly.
Did I hear you say it took you 9 months before you did your first deal?
It took me 9 months, and that wasn't even a wholesale deal. That was me getting a referral check for Bird Dog and property. So I worked for free for like 9 months, and then I made $1,000. And the funny thing is, I earned that money, and I didn't have to like, I wasn't like an accountant or something. I wasn't like on a salary. So I made $1,000 essentially for going to a house, taking pictures. And it happened to be in the same town where I'm from. So I linked like $1,000 with like not really a lot of effort and money. And I was obviously wrong. I still worked my butt off, but my association with money kind of forever changed, because I was getting paid to provide value versus getting paid to like be somewhere, at some time.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think so many people think it's going to happen month 1 or month 2 or month 3 I'm like, every big investor I've ever talked to, or whether they run a brokerage or an agent, it took them 6, 7, 8, 9 months to do it. I mean, if you landed a deal month 1 or month 2, you were lucky, right? It was just like the numbers, like you hit, you hit 00, like right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not, I think it's bad. Like, I'm kind of happy that didn't happen, because let's say I go out as a 20-year-old punk and land a $50,000 wholesale deal. Month 1, I'm jaded. I didn't become the person that I need to become to be able to handle that money. And I probably would have bought a Rolex and been stupid, honestly. And I'm just being real. Cause like, I think, I always see this in books I read and stuff I listen to. It's like the person who inherits money, and I'm not saying this is a true principle, but like, if you don't work for your money and you don't like earn it and you just kind of get it to you, you don't appreciate it. And you don't like, sometimes you're not the best steward of capital. But when you have to kind of go and grow into that income, I think it's like, it makes you appreciate it more, and it makes you a better steward of capital just in general.
Yeah, man, it goes back to that whole, how we started the conversation about, fulfillment comes from the struggle.
Yes.
Right? Fulfillment comes from the struggle. And, if it was easy, it'd be like, it could seem a little empty, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Somehow, like you climbing the mountain and being like, dude, that was friggin' hard. And I'm damn proud I climbed this friggin' mountain, And there's something there, it's just innate in us, right?
It's like magical. Yeah. It's like a weird thing. It's hard to even describe, but like, yeah, it's like if it's not hard, then you don't appreciate it. But if it is hard, it feels so much more fulfilled when you get it done. Like I remember, I guess to end with a story, like I remember I did my first like real big deal where I made like 6 figures on it. And I was a couple years ago. And remember, like it seemed really easy. And I'm like, man, this is super easy. And then all of a sudden I got flagged by the building department, had to fly back to New York for a month to deal with this whole construction project. And it was hard as hell. But when I got that freaking wire, man, it was just because I'm like, there's no way it's this easy. It was like a lay down cellar. And I was like, I'm like, when am I going to get kicked in the teeth here?
Every now and then you get something like that. And it makes up for all the ones that you spent hours and hours and hours for a small little payday or no payday, right? So it all the cosmos balances it all out.
Yeah, bro. You got to be in it for the long game, man. You got to be in it for the long game, and just I see a lot of people too. Like they, I heard like there's a saying in Texas: "Big hat, no cattle." A lot of people like to fake it till like they fake with something that they're not. And just I think if some advice for your listeners, like if you just behave congruently and be cool and be genuine, help people and be a good person, have integrity. I mean, that's more important than making money because the money will follow that. But it's people who I see cut corners and do shady stuff. It's just like, I don't understand it. I try not to associate with people like that. I'm sure obviously you're the same and no one in our mastermind would do that.
You know what's interesting is I think, I mean, it happens at all levels. Every generation has that, right? But there's definitely the younger generation, your generation, millennial generation.
Yeah.
Like you guys are bombarded online so with all these messages of comparison.
Yeah, which, man.
That's a whole nother topic of people can go down the rabbit hole of depression and all the rest because everybody's like trying to live their greatest life online. It's all bullshit,
It's all BS, dude. That's a rented freaking car, man. And it's just anything on the internet, like you got to take with a grain of salt. Like someone says, I did 300 deals last year. Like, what if you made $1,000 on every deal? Like, like cool. Like, what I mean? It's just like whatever. It's all relative.
It's all relative.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Well, cool. Well, how does somebody find you? You have your own podcast as well. So
I'd love to get you on, by the way, so we can work on that after we record this.
Sure thing, man. I'd love to be on it.
Pave the Way podcast, Pave the Way podcast. If you search that on like iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher, it'll come up. And then the best way to get in touch with me besides that would be to follow me on Instagram, my social media. I kind of go in and out of that a little bit, but Grego, GREGO_37. I put out content generally every day and promote our shows and try to put out helpful stuff whenever I have a couple minutes. So that's the best way to get in touch with me for sure.
Cool. Was 37 like your hockey number or something?
That was. You're like the 37. And I'm like, man, because it's kind of a weird number. It's like a goalie's number, even though I wasn't a goalie. And they're like 37. Like, what do I have? Dead cats got your or something? I'm like,
well, I don't know anything about hockey, so I just figured the 37 means something, right? You're like not 37 years old, so
yeah, it's like when I negotiate, I'll pay you $37,000. That sounds better than 40.
That's right. 37, or you always end it like I'll pay you 150, 150,000, $37, right?
Yeah. They're like, how'd you come up with that number? It's like I didn't never split the difference. I'm just a wizard,
Great book, by the way.
Love that book.
Great book, right?
Great.
Any other good book recommendations? Do you have like a top three?
Yeah, for sure. So Never Split the Difference. If you're going to get into any sort of communication, that's probably the best book out there. There's another great book I love called, it's from Jim Rohn. It's called The Art of Exceptional Living. I think it's only on Audible, but it's a really old tape and it's really, really impactful.
Dude, it's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale. That's another one that is like 100 years old, but it's almost like fine wine. The older it is, the more true it is because there's none of this crap. So those 3 books, I think if you just read those, and there's a guy that I actually had on my show yesterday. He's got a 9-figure net worth, and he did a keynote talk, and he's like, go get The Art of Exception. And one of his messages was, go get The Art of Exceptional Living and listen to it 50 times. I think I'm on like 20 or 25 right now. So just like taking these books and reading them and listening to them over and over again and rinsing and repeating they'll start to become part of your psychology, and then you'll be able to make better decisions and think better.
Jim Rohn is the legend, man.
The GOAT, the best.
He's the best. He's the best.
Nothing like him, man.
Greg, man, I appreciate you spending time. It's awesome to have you on here. I've learned so much about your story, and thanks so much. I know our grid listeners are going to be super appreciative of this. And what was it again? If you want to look him up, it's Greg O-37. Greg O-37.
Grego_37. They'll find me right on Instagram.
Awesome, brother. You take care.
Thanks.
I'll talk to you later. Be good.